Welcome back to another edition of the FutureSox RoundUp. My name is Elijah Evans, joined by my co-host Dylan Barnes. It's the off season, man. We have reached the off season. We are recording this, I will admit, before the World Series has ended, so we can't necessarily react to the World Series. But this is going to be coming out when it's officially the off season. So now that we're gearing up for kind of off season stuff and everything, there's no better time than today to talk free agency, man. It's November. We're going to be ready to dive into everything, on the free agency side, the trade side, winter meetings, all of the above. We're going to have you covered all off season. But today is just kind of the day to give a little overview of the free agent class and the positions that the White Sox could be looking to add at, and who would be the logical candidates for a team that we're hoping is going to spend a little bit. It might not be a lot bit, but we're hoping there's going to be some additions made. So we're going to dive into the free agent class. What's going on, Dill?
Nothing much. The World Series has been awesome through 5 games so far. We are recording this on October 30th. So series is going back to Toronto, and it could be over. We'll see when this comes out who ended up winning. But I mean, Blue Jays look like they're in a great spot to beat a team that I don't think many people were expecting to lose this series coming into it. I mean, they were what after they went up after they took the second game. I think they were like minus 300 to win the series coming back to LA. I mean, it's been crazy so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think myself included, and most people had the Dodgers penciled to win this thing, and
Yeah.
they on paper, yeah, maybe they should, and they have an advantage in multiple areas, but the Dodgers offense has sucked. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's been really bad. Other than Shohei, nobody's hitting, and
Yep.
the Blue Jays offense has taken advantage, and they've 2 days in a row they just got the job done. They came off that crazy 18 inning bender, and they were able to just come out and take advantage of the Dodgers being a little flat, and then yesterday the Dodgers in Game 5 looked horrible, honestly. Shohei wasn't bad by any means, but he wasn't great, and the offense did absolutely nothing. So
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. I good for Toronto for being at this point. I'm hoping by the time you guys are hearing this, Toronto won the World Series because
Yeah.
I would rather see that. I think it's just better for baseball, better for fans. It's just more fun. So I'm also really sick of the whole Dodgers winning baseball conversation. So
It's so
them
dumb.
losing would at least limit that conversation a little, maybe, which would be nice. So I'm open for I'm hoping that by the time this is coming out, the Blue Jays are World Series champions, and we'll see what plays out.
Yeah. I mean, how about Trey Savage too? The start that he had last night.
Unreal.
Oh my God, man.
Unbelievable. That guy is
He's so
different.
good.
That guy's different. It's pretty insane. It's really impressive to me, I think, in general, when we look at the landscape of pitching, to just realize how much some of these young pitchers are just like so good so
Yeah.
quickly these days. Like it's not taking that much time to develop some of these guys. They're just balling immediately. It's pretty unbelievable, honestly, to see what you Savage and a variety of other young pitchers. You saw Nolan McLean do it in the big leagues this year, right? Like there's a bunch of other guys that upper echelon of pitching prospects who just are just catapulting into the league and just taking the league by storm, honestly.
Yeah, and I really wish that the White Sox had like that like dog pitcher that you draft in, like, I don't want to say like the top of the round, or the top of the
Yeah.
top half of the class, but like a guy that just like comes onto the scene out of nowhere and then just rises up the ranks and goes from low A to MLB in a year. And I know that like the White Sox don't really like to push prospects like that aggressively in their draft year, but like just seeing what Trey Savage did, like to go from low A to pitching in the World Series in a year, is unreal. And I mean, he absolutely looks the part of like a World Series MVP. I'm going to be honest. Like
Mm,
if the Blue Jays pull it out,
I,
I mean, that winning Game 5 on a
yeah,
performance like that, that's like the most pivotal game in the series. So I don't know. I could see
yeah.
him winning it.
I think if he gets the save in Game 7, that'd be pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
If
that
he
would. I
pitches
think
at all,
I think he
yeah,
pitches it all in Game 7 and does well. I think that would give it to him. It's hard to not go Vladdy just because he's been
yeah,
so crazy all postseason and has a hit in every single playoff World Series game, I think, so far. So it's like
yeah,
it's a tough one. We'll see how
yeah,
that plays out. But yeah, you'll know by Monday when you're listening to this.
yeah.
But I'm looking forward to seeing how all of that ends up going. But for now, we're going to talk off season. We're doing this in advance, but we're ready to talk about the off season. I had Sean Anderson on this past week. We talked a little bit about just how the roster looks, how you shape up this roster, right? But diving deeper into it and really getting us geared up for the off season here. I want to just take a look at every positional group that the White Sox could possibly add at. So I don't think the White Sox are signing a shortstop, right? They're definitely not signing a catcher, right? But there's a lot of areas where we could see improvement. There's a lot of areas we could see moves made. I think that we are both in agreement that a corner makes some sense. An outfielder would make some sense if you're able to move off of one of the current three starters. A veteran starter could make some sense to just give some depth to this rotation before all the young guys make their way onto the roster. At least one, probably even two, maybe bullpen arms would make a lot of sense. So there's a lot of areas where we can talk about the ways to get it going. You want to start pitching or you want to start hitting? What are we feeling?
I feel like the hitting side is what people want to hear more, just because
Yeah, it's
there's a
tricky.
lot that is out there.
It's also just tricky because we
Yeah,
don't know where the White Sox are going to slot guys in. Like there's still
right.
a lot of positional I won't say like issues, but like there's just a lot of positional unsureness right now with this team of just like where does everybody stack up? Me and Sean talked about this a lot of like how do you make this infield fit? Because there's a lot of guys that are competing for spots. There's gonna have to be some guys that get left behind, right? Like you don't like there's not innings for everybody, and there's also just not a guaranteed picture of who plays where outside of the fact that I do believe after what we saw this year, Colson Montgomery will play shortstop pretty much every day. I think that there's still a question later down the road of if he gets pushed third from Bonham or from Carlson, whatever that may look like. For 2026, Colson will be the everyday shortstop. Outside of that, you can't put anyone in this infield and say, oh, yeah, they're definitely starting there. Vargas could play first. He could play third. We could see, yes, Mydroth probably has the opening day spot at second base. Antonacci's behind him. You've got Curtis Mead who can play anywhere except short, really. Lenyn Sosa could play some first or some second, probably. It's a really weird infield. So looking at the infield options, I don't think they add a middle infielder just because
I
of the situation with Mydroth, with Antonacci, the fact that like Mead and Sosa can also both play second too, like depending on who ends up being on the roster. Even like, I think it's a corner if you're going to add in the infield. Is that fair to say?
I think that's absolutely fair, and I think that we're talking all about like, oh, the positional versatility that all of these guys have is good. And while yes, like being able to play multiple positions is good, eventually you gotta have your spot, and
Yeah.
eventually Chase Mydroth might get pushed out because
Yep.
Sam Antonacci is just a better player, or Miguel Vargas might get pushed to first because Lenyn Sosa can't play anywhere else, and he has to play first. So Vargas gets pushed to
Right.
third. But I think that the ideal spot for me would be to sign a third baseman and then trade Lenyn Sosa, because I don't want to say sell high on Lenyn, because for all we know, he could repeat his 20 homer season that he just had. But, given his profile, I think that a trade of him could make some sense. And then you get an outfielder, a bullpen, a starting, I don't know. But I think that the way that I would do it is I would sign a third baseman and then have Vargas solely at first. I could be persuaded into a first baseman, but I'm not really big in the camp
Yeah.
of signing a first baseman to like I don't want to say a big money deal, but I think that third basemen they can provide more value on a lower dollar amount.
My only hesitation there is, do you think Miguel Vargas can provide the offense for an everyday first baseman? Because I'm not convinced there.
Fair.
And I do think he showed enough to be a solid defender at third, where if the bat is a tick below, what you'd want it to be at first, you could justify it a little more at third if you can play some solid defense there, right? So that's my kind of like, I do think a corner makes sense though. So let's break down some of these options because I think it could go either direction. I don't disagree. Like I'm not opposed to a bigger deal going to a third baseman. The issue is there's not a lot of options there. I think that we can pencil Alex Bregman as a no. We can pencil Pete Alonso as a no. I think those are very comfortable no's. At this point, I think Josh Naylor is probably a no, which is a tricky. He's played himself into, from all indications, upwards of $100 million contract, which I don't see the White Sox giving him. Starting on the first base side, I mentioned Alonso there. I mentioned Josh Naylor. Josh Naylor is, in the past two seasons, is a 5.5 WAR player across the last 2 years combined, coming off of a really strong postseason with the Mariners. Just generally a good second half since getting traded to the Mariners at the deadline, right? So this is a guy coming off of like he was traded to be a big piece, and he was a big piece,
Right.
honestly. Like he really was. The rest of the market in the first baseman side. Max Muncy, club option, 10 million. Dodgers aren't turning that down. I don't see why they would. So you're wiping off the board of Alonso. Again, Naylor, like if the White Sox want to go out and give Naylor a bag, sign me up. I'm down. I
Yeah.
don't think it's happening. I think that realistically, he's pushed his AAV to the 20 million mark, right? And somewhere around that range. Maybe it's a tick below that, but I think he's proven to be a $20 million player maybe this season, which puts him at 4 for 80, 5 for 95, 5 for 90. Like, it's not impossible. I don't think it's happening though. So you look at the rest of first base beyond Josh Naylor and Pete Alonso. I think Ryan O'Hearn becomes the next most interesting option at that point. I think Ryan O'Hearn is a guy coming off of a season with San Diego. I mentioned him to Sean the other day, how he could be a guy that you could see justifying a decent contract for a 2 3 year deal because he's 32. He's a Ryan Fuller guy, right? He came up
Right.
with the Orioles, right? So you've got an immediate tie there already. He, his spot tracks right now is what I use for contracts. Spot tracks projects him at approximately 12 million in terms of AAV. I think it gets even a little higher than that, maybe if it's only a 2 year deal. I could see like 2 for 28, 2 for 30, or 3 for 40, maybe something along those lines. It wouldn't be cheap, but it could make some sense. I'm going to read the rest of the guys, then we can dive into it more. Other guys at first base: Josh Bell, Paul Goldschmidt, Luis Ariz, Reese Hoskins is on a mutual option, Carlos Santana, who's about 90 years old, Wilmer Flores, Ty France, Rowdy Telez, Dominic Smith. Yeah, that's what we got on the first base side. So it's not the prettiest list, in all honesty, right? I mentioned some of those guys off the top. Like, is there anyone outside of O'Hearn that you're interested in talking about, really?
Not really, if I'm honest, just because like the top of the top of Pete Alonso and Naylor probably are priced out of the White Sox's range right
Right.
now. And then you look past them, and then it's 38-year-old Paul Goldschmidt. Max Muncy's probably staying with the Dodgers. Josh Bell has been whatever. And then, yeah, you go down the list and it's just either old or guys who I really don't trust to be a needle mover or trust to perform enough as on like a 1 year deal that they can get flipped at the deadline. So I think that O'Hearn is like the most logical choice, just given that he is coming off of his best season, and he's young enough where he can be able to command a multi-year deal. And maybe he's the first baseman of the wild card round White Sox in 2028. Like, I'm not saying it's gonna be next year, but like, let's say it's a 3 year deal, and he ends up being like the first baseman. I mean, he would be 35 at the time, so I don't think that O'Hearn would be like my favorite, but I think that he would be serviceable enough where you could withstand giving him, like you said, 3 years, 40 million. I would even push it up to 45, 50,
Yeah.
just given I mean, he was an all-star this year, and I mean, San Diego did give up a decent chunk for him and
Yeah, you're right.
Laureano. So I think that that 3 years, 40 to 50 total money, I think that that's what I would do. But like, outside of him, there's really not many first base options. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe if you want to put a Miguel Andujar in
I,
that
I
first base
saw that.
bucket,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
Andrew Hart. I think his value on the market is more from the fact that he started playing the outfield spots
right,
more, and that's where like
yeah,
maybe that fits for the White Sox as a guy who could do both. And Ahern has played some outfield in the past too, which is one thing I like about him. But I do agree. I think at first base, like if you're going to add someone, it's kind of Ryan O'Hearn or nothing. Like I'd
yeah.
almost rather just roll out Vargas or Sosa or something than any of those other names we mentioned. I mean, Wilmer Flores maybe is a bounce back guy. He had some good years. He's shown the ability to be a decent player who could play in multiple positions as well, which I guess adds some versatility. Coming off of a brutal season, though, I want to say two brutal seasons in a row. Like he was an 860 OPS guy in 2023 though, with 23 homers, and even this past year with a rough season, had 16 home runs, walks at a decent clip, doesn't strike out a ton, just didn't have a lot of positive impact this year, and it's a pull only type of archetype, really. I don't hate it. I don't love it. But I think it's like it could be an option. Josh Bell's the other one where you think about, a switch hitter with like some amount of power. Like maybe that's the appealing aspect there, of a guy who, I mean, Josh Bell at the beyond the surface level, I don't hate. And Sean mentioned this to me, and I kind of scoffed him off actually. But 20 homers in the last 3 seasons straight, 720 OPS for plus for 3 straight years. I don't hate Josh Bell. I don't hate it. I can
How
see
much do you
it.
think he would cost?
I think Josh Bell is like a a 2 for 20, 2 for 15.
That's around where I was gonna say. I was gonna say 2 for
Yeah.
15 to 17.
Yeah, 2 for 20 maybe. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't mind that actually. The more that I look at it, I guess I'm sleeping on Josh Bell a little bit because the exit velocities are strong. He doesn't strike out a bunch. He gets on base, switch hitter, so he sprays the ball. I could talk myself into Josh Bell. I
Yeah,
could talk myself into
I feel like the more that I'm like looking at the overall class of first basemen or just like
Yeah,
corner infielders in
I could talk
general,
myself into
like
Josh Bell.
I think Josh Bell is like in terms of reasonable outcomes for the White Sox, he might be like second or third on my list now that we're talking about him.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we wanted to talk through this because I looked at some of these before, and I guess I hadn't quite looked at Josh Bell's numbers because, he's always been a guy that can hit the ball hard, right? So
Yeah.
he's going to produce high level EVs, and he's going to barrel balls for sure. It's 20 homers in basically every year of his career, right? I mean, he's going out right now. I mean, the 20, yeah, this past year was so dating back dating back 4 seasons for Josh Bell, let's say. I I could get behind this. At 2022, it's 17 homers with a 784 OPS on base percentage of 362. You go to 2023, and these are all split between multiple teams because he keeps trading at the deadline because he's kind of
Right.
been this
Yeah.
like veteran pickup, trade him at the deadline guy for most of his career, honestly, since moving Pittsburgh and then Washington. 2023, it's 22 homers, 28 doubles, 744 OPS. 2024, it was a 19 homers, 724 OPS. This past season, 22 homers, 742 OPS. I could get behind Josh Bell.
Yeah, I feel like I mean like we're saying, there's not a lot of reasonable first base or third base options for the White Sox in
Yeah.
their price range, and I think like O'Hearn or Bell would be probably the two that I would be looking at the most if I were the White Sox,
Yeah.
because I mean you're probably not getting a Pete Alonso, you're
No.
probably not getting
You don't have to say
Josh.
probably. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, not even probably. You're probably not getting Josh Naylor is what I probably should
Yeah.
have started with. But then, like, if you move over to third base,
That's where I was going to
I
go next. Yeah. Third.
I don't think that there's really anybody that I would want to sign at their price point. Obviously Alex Bregman or Eugenio Suarez, yes, but then you look down the list, it's
Is Suarez a yes? Because the more and more I dive into Suarez's free agency case, I'm less interested in the idea of Suarez. I think that's the one who could be somewhat reasonable on that list, but it's a risky profile, man. The guy's going to be 35 next season. He's going to get a good amount of money. It's going to be 20 AAV probably, if not,
is it?
and for
He
15 at
ha-
least. It's got to be.
I would give you 15. He played horribly after he got
Yeah,
traded
for
back to
sure.
Seattle. I think he lost himself
But it's
probably
15 homers,
15
right?
million.
So it's how do you value the just pure power production and the fact that he still hits the crap out of the ball. I mean, it's still an 89th percentile
Yeah,
barrel rate this season. The hard hit rate's high, but he striked out at a 30%. First of all, I just don't see the White Sox going after someone who strikes out at the clip
right.
Suarez
Yeah.
strikes out at. I think that the target guys in this free agency for the White Sox on the hitting side will be more of these versatile on base threats. And yeah, you want some power, but I don't think they go for the power sacrificing contact type of archetypes. Like I think the Bell style, where it's more power but with a consistent walk rate and a decently low strike rate, is probably more likely than a Suarez type, even if they had the money for him, right?
Yeah. And then looking at the rest of the third base options, there's not much.
It's not.
Would we entertain a Yoan Moncada reunion?
Sean said the same thing. I don't want to hear it. I'm good. I'm good.
I'm probably good on that too. Just given, how hurt he is, I don't think
Yeah,
that fans would want him back either.
yeah, I'm
And
good.
then, looking down the list, you got Isaiah Kiner Falefa. He can play all over, but he's really not that good. Jose Iglesias. We mentioned Miguel Andujar, Paul DeYoung, Chris Taylor, and then a name that I kind of can talk myself into it is Kaz Akamoto from. He's coming over
I knew you were
from
going there.
Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the contract projections that I think I forget who did it, but he's only at like a 50 to 65 like total money. Like I kind of could get on board with that. Looking at his numbers from overseas, like they're not horrible, and I think that he could kind of be the guy that can sort of fit all the puzzle pieces together. You put him at third, you put Vargas at first, and then I think that I could get on board with a Kaz Akamoto contract for the White Sox, and I mean he would be the first Asian player signed like directly from Asia for the White Sox since when? I don't even remember the last.
Yeah. So, little background for those that are a little less familiar here. Kazuma Okamoto from Japan is going to be 30 on opening day. So, it's a little bit of a late posting for a guy coming over from the NPB. In 69 games this season in Nippon professional baseball, had an OPS over 1,000, 15 home runs, 49 RBIs. Everything I've seen is saying that this is a guy who can be a pretty well-rounded, versatile hitter at the big league
Yeah,
level. He's not going to be a guy who wows you. I don't think he's definitely not the ceiling of a Munetaka Murakami, who most people have heard about from the World Baseball Classic, right? That's a guy who, huge range of outcomes. The power is
yeah,
stupid, could end up striking out 40% of the time at the big league level.
if not higher.
Yeah, Okamoto is a guy who I think, again, I'm not going to act like I'm an MPB expert. I've read, watched a couple things. I've looked into it a little bit. It does seem like he's a guy that is going to maintain a pretty steady contact rate while still being able to tap into some power. He has shown the ability to play, first and third. Seems like he could end up being more of a first baseman, which I guess is not a downside, right? I guess if he ends up being a first baseman, as we talked about, like you don't need to go for one exact specific position in the corner because you could make it work either way. The thing with him, I think his market's going to get driven up purely off of interest. We just read this whole list. Like, how
Yeah,
many guys in this list are contending teams going to want to sign? Not many, right? Like
right.
once Bregman's off the board, once Naylor is off the board, once Alonso's off the board, and once Suarez is off the board, let's say after those four, I think all these teams would rather go after an Okamoto and take a little bit of a chance on the guy like that than go for that variety of the Josh Bells of the world that we
Right.
mentioned there. So I do think it can make sense for the White Sox, and I've seen the projection. So the just baseball projection right now for him is 3 to 5 years at an AAV of 15 million. That's what we had in an article that went out. I think
Yeah.
it gets pushed up higher. I honestly do. I do think he ends up signing a 4 year 670, 80 million because I think the market is going to demand it. And I think that teams are going to be a little more willing, from everything I've heard, there's going to be less interest in longer deals for guys. And that could result in some more juiced up shorter term deals for a guy like this who's 30 years old, but making his way over to the States for a time. It's going to take a year or two potentially for him to get really acclimated. It's a well-rounded profile. I like that you mention it. I would love the idea. I still just don't see it being the most realistic, which puts us back to that Naylor or not even Naylor, puts us back to that Bell or O'Hearn type of conversation, probably.
Yeah, but I think that like I don't want to say that the White Sox are like trying to turn a corner in the
I,
next in the next in this winter and next winter, but I feel like if you want to like compete next year or not in 2026, but compete in 2027, I feel like you got to start making the moves to at least be like competitive in 2027. And I'm not saying that they're going to go out and win 85, 90 games in
yeah,
27, but like if you can be like around 70 to 75 wins this year, I think that like you can make a reasonable case for the White Sox to be a playoff team in 2027. But like I just think that there needs to be some sort of, and I hate saying like a big level signing because for the White Sox, like 60 million should not be a big signing, but at this point, man, like you got to start to turn a corner, and I think that they're gonna maybe give like one 4 year deal at around the 60 million mark.
I can see it. I can see it being possible for sure. There's a couple other. I'm just trying to look through and see if there's other options to mention here at the corners. I think Willie Castro is one name who, yeah, he's technically listed as a middle infielder, but I think that's one guy who I could see making some sense as a plays all over the infield, has played some outfield even, right? Like a versatile. If you want to spend a little bit on a guy who can play every day but bounce around the field, maybe that's the guy. At the same time, you've got Brooks Baldwin at home. It's like if you want to have a guy that plays all over
Right.
the field, you have one. So like maybe that's kind of a useless type of addition. Other names that maybe could fit in the picture. Yeah, Ahmed Rosario, maybe
I
he's
was
played
kind
some
of
third
thinking
in the
that.
past. I'm looking at maybe like a Dylan Moore buy low. There's not a lot of stuff there. I do think as much as I would love an Okamoto, for me, I do think that a O'Hearn or Bell is probably the most likely outcome if the White Sox choose to add an infielder. we'll flip to the outfield in a sec, but like, where's your like, who's the guy that you think if they do? I don't even know if they do add an infielder. Frankly, with so many infield guys that are maybe they just shuffle around players and positions and just let the infield ride, which I think is probably just as likely as adding someone. If they were to add someone, who do you think is going to be in the infield?
I think it's Bell.
Yeah,
I think that the more we talk about him, the switch hitter, guy who can put up a good at bat, guy who can hit you 20-ish homers a year, and can play a decent first base. From everything I've seen, I want to say he's like a decent fielder, not anything crazy, but I think that he's probably the best fit. But I think that I just think that they just stick with the sort of Vargas at first, Sosa at first, Mydroth at second, Colson at short, Vargas at third. But I mean, I could very easily see them going out and signing, one of the names that we sort of brush past and saying like, oh yeah, I don't really want him, but you never know. I think that if there were to be a signing, I would like it to be one of O'Hearn or Bell.
yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think I'm with you on that front. I think that's probably the most likely and just the realistic option, honestly. Flipping over to the outfield because this all is like everything's connected here. Every like if they spend on a Brian O'Hearn and spend 15 million on Brian O'Hearn, it probably reduces the chance of an outfielder that we want, and vice versa. So if we talk about an outfielder that we think could be a good addition, that might be not an option if they do go the O'Hearn or Bell route, right? So this is all in tandem, but I do think if a corner infielder is added, I think those are the two clear most likely options. Flipping over to the outfield, it's another like thin. This class is interesting because it's thin, man. Like the pitching side, we'll talk about it. The relief pitching side, the pitching side in general,
Right.
pretty deep. This offseason. There's not as much maybe of the on the starting pitching side, it's a little bit less like guaranteed superstars compared to the relievers, but like the pitching side in general has a lot of depth. The hitting side just isn't the same this year, man. When you look at the outfield, first of all, an outfield addition in free agency that's not just like a depth fourth outfielder would have to be accompanied by moving either one of the three outfielders in Andrew Benintendi, Luis Robert, and Mike Tauchman. One of those guys would have to be moved to add a legit starting outfielder. The other option is you just add a depth fourth outfielder guy. They fill the role, Michael A. Taylor-esque, right? Fills the role behind those three and is the fourth rotating outfielder. And you got Brooks Baldwin already to do that, though, kind of. So I'm like, what does that really do? If an outfielder were to be legitimately added, Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker off the table. Beyond that, there's some guys. Me and Sean talked about this. There's a few guys I actually think could make a lot of sense. Again, it would have to be accompanied by moving a Talkman or a Benny or a Robert. The names that immediately kind of pop out, I'll just read through some of these names and we can react to it from there. Harrison Bader would be a really exciting one. I think probably priced out. Trent Grisham, again, another guy who I think would be fun, but also probably going to be priced out. Maybe those two are an option. Cedric Mullins is an option. I think Mike Yastrzemski might be my favorite option just on first glance. Max Kepler, another option to potentially consider. Lane Thomas. Anybody else you got that's worth a full mention there? We mentioned Andujar earlier.
Maybe I'm not sure. I mean, if they trade a Mike Talkman, I think that Jesse Winker could maybe just fill into that like sort of platoon role with I want to say Brooks Baldwin, but I think that you could see like what they did last year with signing Talkman and Slater to be sort of that right field platoon. So if they trade out a Talkman, I think that you could see potentially two outfielders signed with let's say it's Jesse Winker, and then I don't know Randall Grichuk. I just like a
Yeah.
righty, a
Yeah.
righty like a platoon lefty and a platoon righty. So if they do go that route, I think that Winker and Grichuk would be fine. And honestly, if they just roll with the outfield that they have right now, and then go out and get Randall Grichuk, I kind of would like it. I mean, Grichuk put up like monster numbers. I want to say it was
And
last
lefties.
year.
He matches lefties.
Yeah,
Always
he
has.
can destroy lefties.
Yeah, I don't hate Grichuk. Is Grichuk? I don't even know if
He's
I
on a
have
mutual.
listed.
He's on a mutual with the Royals for
Okay.
5 mil.
I think the Royals might pick that up. The Royals are desperate for offense. they
I'm
they
not sure.
might pick that up, which is
Does
interesting. Yeah,
does he pick it up though?
I don't think his market's that much more exciting than that, but like, yeah, maybe he declines that.
I think he could get like 8 mil from some team.
Yeah, I could see it. So okay, so backing up for some of the options that we mentioned there, how in would you be on a Grisham or Bader, and that would be a pretty sizable expense, right? That would probably come in place of a O'Hearn or Bell, like we just mentioned earlier. Would you be interested in the idea of a Grisham or Bader, both who have been center fielders? So it opens up a little bit of a wrinkle there where you can trade Robert with some more comfort, knowing one of those guys can immediately be in center when you've got Braden Montgomery in a corner as well.
I think Grisham would be like my ideal guy that you go out and get because I mean, how many homers did he hit this year? 30
30
something?
something, yeah, a
Yeah,
lot.
I mean, he I get he was a lefty at Yankee Stadium and using that short porch, but like this was his best year by like quality of contact metrics. It was unlike anything he'd ever done before. And I think that he's gonna be. I mean, how much is he priced at on Spot Track? I'm trying to.
So Spot Track, I
pull
don't
him
I
up.
don't agree with this. Spot Track has him at 12 million AAV in market value. I think
No,
it's 15
I I
plus.
think it's I think it's like 17 to
Yeah,
20 at this point.
yeah. I would put Grisham personally at somewhere in the 3 to 4 years at 15 to 17 probably. I
Yeah,
think three. I mean, again, it's hard. The Grisham situation is tricky because you're betting on 1 year. I mean, it's
right.
not that he hasn't never been good, but like in terms of production, some of the quality of contact, he's always been a low chase rate. He's always been a guy that's been able to barrel the ball, right? This is the first year he's been a good big league player. Like it
Right,
really is.
right.
So that makes it tricky to really bet on that and to really want to give a lot of money to that, which is where some teams might be hesitant. With that said, the dude just put up 34 homers and an 812 OPS and plays a pretty solid center field.
Yeah,
So like, that's gonna get you some money. And I don't think it's in the White Sox price range, but I don't think it's
I doubt
impossible.
it.
And then Harrison Bader, on the other hand, is also really interesting. Had a really strong second half of the season, but also is someone who, has never been great either. And the quality of contact for Bader is also a lot worse than Grisham, honestly. He strikes out a lot. He's a guy that's going to chase a lot. He's going to get to the ball sometimes. And the flip side with Bader is he's an elite defensive center fielder,
Right.
so a defensive outfielder in general. That's a guy who you know is going to give you plus defense and plus speed. So maybe that's a little bit more of an interesting archetype. I still think Bader is getting 12 a year, 12 AAV or plus, right?
Right.
So if both those guys are getting, substantive 12 to 17 million a year contracts, I don't know how much the White Sox are in play for that.
I doubt that the White Sox would be in play for either of them, but if they were, that would be great. But I think that you're probably going to be picking from the Lane Thomases, the Jesse Winkers. Maybe they value O'Hearn as like sort of that versatile first base and
Right.
right fielder type where he played some outfield with Baltimore and San Diego. Maybe they sign him and it's sort of like it's like you're going to play first and you're going to play right. So I could see that being the case, but I could very easily see them just rolling out like I said, a Randall Grichuk and Jesse Winker right field platoon.
Yeah, where are you at with Mike Yastrzemski? Because I do think he kind of fits that middle ground where he's a tick below the market of a Grisham or a Bader, but I do see him as a significant notch above the market of Jesse Winkers of the world.
Yeah. Would
This
you
is the
sign
guy.
him to a would you sign him to a multi-year deal or is he
I would
just somebody
I
you
would
would flip
sign Mike
at the
Yastrzemski to
deadline?
a 2-year deal. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Okay.
I think if you sign Mike Yastrzemski to a 2-year deal at 35 years old, he is coming off a season in which he 3 straight seasons in a row where he's been above a 735 OPS and 15 plus homers in all 3 of the last seasons. So he's been in the lineup. It's probably more of a strong side platoon as he ages, right? Like I don't see him facing as many lefties. But when you've got a team where you can have Brooks Baldwin face some versatile, you have Braden Montgomery who will face both sides, right? Like you've got a lot of guys in the pipeline, and obviously Robert's very good against lefties, right? I think Yastrzemski, right? You look at some of the data there. It's a walk rate over 10%. It's a strikeout rate under 20%. He's whiffing at an under 20% clip this past season. He has a strong arm, so that adds a little bit of. He's not a great defender in the outfield, but he's played outfield his whole life, so it's not a negative in the outfield necessarily. I think just I could see Yastrzemski making some sense. I think the Royals first of all are going to try to maintain him. I think he was really good for them actually down the stretch when they were making a
Yeah.
little bit of a push there, and I think they're going to try to keep him. But I do think Yastrzemski on a 2 for 18, 2 for 20 would be something I'd be open to because if he has a really strong half, and Braden Montgomery's ready to go, and you think Brooks has taken a step forward, you could flip him with a year and a half of control, and it wouldn't be like a scary contract necessarily. On the flip side of that, if he has a good year and you just want to maintain it and you think Yastrzemski can be the third piece in the outfield alongside Braden and X, Sure, I'm open to that. I think he could be a nice middle ground option in the outfield, honestly.
Yeah, I think that the more I look at him, the more I'm like, all right, yeah, I could buy into him getting like, yeah, 2 years
Yeah,
around that type of money. But then I mean, I kind of don't hate a Cedric Mullins. I
uh,
really don't. I
yeah,
like he was good in the past, and I think like it's similar to Eugenio Suarez, where he played himself out of some, I don't want to say
a
significant money,
lot.
but
No, a
he
lot.
was he was pretty bad for the Mets down the stretch, and I think the White Sox could buy low on him and sign him to a 2 years, 20-ish million, if he even costs that much. I think that I would prefer him over Yastrzemski because he can provide you better defense. And I mean, we've seen the bat at times. I mean, he went 30-30 in 2022 or 2021. I know we're getting farther removed from that now, but like I think that I would prefer Mullins over Yastrzemski, but if I'm being entirely honest, I don't think that they sign an outfielder. I think that if an outfielder is brought in, I think it's going to be through a trade. But I would not be shocked if they sign one of the platoon outfielders and then they just roll with that.
Yeah, I think with Mullins, it's just a downward curve. It just is a very clear downward trend from the last couple seasons. The quality of contact has never been great, and it's been particularly poor for three straight seasons now. It's a guy who doesn't get a lot of launch. The defense is solid, but the arm strength is brutal. It's like you're paying for a 15. The production, right? Like 15 homers and 20 stolen bases, pretty much the last three seasons straight. Like sure, but it's very low on base skills in general. I mean, he only got on base at a 300 clip for 3 years in a row, pretty much. I don't know. I don't know if I can buy into it necessarily. I think the bat speed has gotten lower. It's never been particularly high in general, but I don't know. I'm just not sure what it is about Mullins that just has me. Yeah, it's not just the bad second half, and it was really rough. But I don't know if I'm buying into his archetype. But I do agree. I think that a free agent ad is probably more of those veteran platoon guys. But I think if you were to put some money on someone, I wouldn't mind Mikey Shremsky. That's kind of where I'm at with this class. Max Kepler, I also am not like totally opposed to the idea of.
I was
I
going to bring
think
him up.
that's been like a White Sox like name in like, oh, the White Sox could sign Max Kepler. I've heard like the last four off seasons
Right.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's just like a name that's always been in the realm of possibilities. The metrics are pretty solid. He gets some good power. Like it's power. He walks at a good clip. He can play a decent corner. Like I wouldn't be upset about a Kepler. It's very pull happy. It definitely would be a strong side platoon, but I'm okay with a strong side platoon if you're going to add someone in an affordable manner, right?
Yeah, I think that again, I think that a trade of Robert Benintendi or Talkman has to come first
Right.
before we even discuss adding an outfielder, like
Yeah.
actually. But I think we can expect an outfielder to be traded this year. I'm not sure which of the three it's going to be, but I think at least one of them gets moved, and I would not put two out of the realm of possibility. But I think
Yeah.
that yeah, if an outfielder does get moved, I think you would have to put money on Kepler, Yastrzemski, or maybe like they do the platoon thing where you sign a Talkman and a Slater to sort of be the right fielder.
Right.
So I think that an outfield trade comes like I don't want to say in the winter meetings or like around that time, but I think that if that does happen, I think that the White Sox are going to be active in the outfield market, but I would expect them to be more active on the infield and pitching side,
Yeah.
if I had to guess.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It really is. It's hard
Yeah,
to tell where this to. The only area where like I think you guarantee one signing is the bullpen. I don't
right.
think you can say, oh, for sure they're adding a corner infielder or an outfielder or a starting pitcher. I think all three of those areas, like you'd hope they'd add all three of those, ideally, right? But I think that realistically, you're going to get one or two of those positions with a legitimate ad, and picking which one is not very simple, honestly.
Yeah, it's tough, especially just like we said it off the top. Like there are a lot of guys who are fighting for spots, and it's going to come down to like how well you do in spring training,
Yeah,
and like if Chase Mydroth doesn't perform well in spring training, he might be on the bench for the I don't want to say the majority of the season, but like he could find himself into a bench role, especially if a corner infielder is signed and you ended up pushing Miguel Vargas to third, and then you got Lenny Sosa going back to second. I'm really not sure what the offseason looks
Yeah,
like, and I think that's pretty fun because you
it is.
can go in expecting nothing, and if you get nothing, then you can't say you were surprised. But then if they actually do something, then you're like, all right, nice, cool.
Right. No, exactly. I'm with you there. Let's go over to pitching. Let's just keep this simple on starters. Stop me at the first pitcher you think is possible for the White Sox to
Okay.
sign. Because I'm going to go through the starting pitchers. Obviously, there's some high end names here that are not going to be in play. The first name you hear that you think is a legitimate possibility for the White Sox, tell me to pause and then we will stop there and go from there. Okay, I'm not including options people because
All right.
I'm looking at this right now. So not going to include Shota. I think that's going to be an option that gets picked up. Not including Chris Sale's option. I'm pretty confident that one's going to be picked up. Brandon Woodruff, maybe not because the Brewers are cheap, but
Probably not.
that's silly, but whatever. Anyways, the team that just made the NLCS isn't even going to consider keeping their two best pitchers, I guess. But regardless,
Nope.
starting from the top, though, I'm
Okay.
not including Freddie for this purpose. Freddie Peralta, if they don't pick up an $8 million option,
I think they pick him up and trade him.
even if they fine, maybe they trade him. But if you decline an $8 million option for that guy, you're crazy. So
Right.
not including Freddie Peralta. Starting from the top, Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Ranger Suarez, Michael King, Shane Bieber, Lucas Giolito, LOL, Zach Gallen, Brandon Woodruff, Chris Bassett, Merrill Kelly.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. First
I
name.
think
First name. We're
I
stopping on a name.
I think that he could be in the market, but I do not want to sign him.
I would agree with that stance. I think that's the stance I would be on as well. In the market, okay. So Merrill Kelly 30. So all those guys I just said, I would agree with you. Not in the White Sox market.
Right.
I don't think, given the amount of pitching coming up too, I think that if you're going to allocate real money, it should be. And I know the pitching was so bad last year, and that's why people are like, okay, go get a stud starter. I still don't think the allocation of one hypothetical big contract should be towards a starting pitcher. I really
Yeah.
don't. I would rather put that money towards one of those hitters we mentioned. If you're going to put a big contract on the table, I'd rather do it for a Grisham or an O'Hearn or someone in that kind of bucket, right? So none of those guys I mentioned. Starting with Merrill Kelly, 37 years old, coming off of 9 million AAV with Texas last year, was traded at the deadline. It would be like a 1 to 2 year deal. I think he'll get probably in the 15 range in AAV.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a bit higher, honestly, which is kind of crazy to think about for a 37-year-old, but it could be. Gelly, like you're a no. I kind of lean no there as well.
It's just he's old, and I don't trust the pitcher of his archetype, like very like cutter breaking ball heavy. I don't trust him to like pitch well until he's 40. I mean, like he's gonna be. I mean, I think he just turned 37 like a couple of weeks ago. I was looking at his Fangraphs page because I was literally having this discussion with one of my buddies, and we were kind of like going through everybody, and I was like, Merrill Kelly's 37. Why did I have him in my head that he was like 33? Because
Yeah.
I mean, if he was 33, then it would have been more
Right,
appealing. But I mean, the fact that he's already 37, and how well did he do this year? Like, did
He
the
did
metrics back up?
terrible year. It wasn't a good year, but it wasn't honestly a terrible year from Kelly. He still produces a lot of chase. It's pretty crazy. His off speed still does its job. Honestly, he doesn't walk a ton of guys. It gives up some pretty hard contact. Honestly, but in general, like 32% chase rate and only a 6% ball walk rate, like. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. He mixes and matches a ton. He throws 5 pitches over 10% of the time. He throws 6 pitches at least 7% of the time. It like I could talk myself into a 1 year deal for Kelly. I don't think I'd have any interest
Yeah.
in a multiple year for Kelly, and I do think he's still decent enough where he gets a 2 year deal probably. In which case, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think that's sort of my boat. But I again, I don't think that the White Sox are going to be like super chomping at the bit to sign a
Yeah,
37-year-old.
no, I'm with you.
But especially given like the type of money that we just talked about, like I don't think that they're going to want to give out that type of money to
Right.
an aging veteran starting pitcher where you have a ton of arms coming up anyways. So I think that they go like the cheaper veteran route. So
Okay.
if
Some
you want to just keep
some other
reading off
names
the
here.
names,
I'm gonna keep. Yeah, you don't have to stop me on these. I'm just gonna read 5 or 6 of the next ones here. Zach Eflin, Nick Martinez, Zach Littell, Nestor Cortez, Adrian Hauser reunion, uh, Eric Fetty reunion, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander.
No, no,
We're reading some funny ones here for sure.
no.
It's getting a little ugly. Tyler Malley, I actually don't hate that. I'm
I
open to
I
that
could get
idea.
on board with that.
Tyler Anderson as well, I actually wouldn't totally be opposed to. Miles Michaelis, Martin Perez, mutual option at 10 mil or decline option, and his
No,
market value is listed at 5 or so.
yeah.
Where Griffin Canning, I don't hate the idea of.
I was gonna mention him.
Who else? I'm just going down the list here. Dustin May,
I
maybe.
was
Jose
Canning and
Quintana,
May.
maybe.
Canning and May. Those were the
Okay,
two
so
names where like
give me your
if
pitch on those ones.
Canning was having a really good year before he popped his Achilles coming off the mound on like it was I think it was a soft grounder that he tried to make a play on and
Yeah,
just came down on the wrong side of the mound and popped his Achilles. So I mean, if he's fully healthy at I want to say the start of the year, given the fact that Achilles probably take
yeah,
like I think it's a full calendar year to
usually,
fully
yeah,
recover. Um, but I mean, I kind of don't hate that. I mean, you can probably get him for somewhat cheap, given. I mean, he was only healthy for about a month or two, and then May, like I can never give up on him. The stuff that he has, man, like I can't quit him. I know that he's not good, but I'm never gonna give up on him. Like the type of sinker and breaking ball combo that he has, I have no idea how he's not good. I mean, yeah, the strikes aren't there, but I feel like he should be like in that Michael King sort of bracket of pitchers where it's like a sinker going one way, sweeper going the other. So I think that like if you're gonna be that sort of reclamation hub that the White Sox have been the last couple years, I kind of don't hate Dustin May on like a cheap-ish deal. I
yeah.
I don't hate it.
I don't hate it. It just was so bad this year, man. Like I don't
I
hate it, but
know.
there's
I
just some
know.
starts where it was like I don't disagree with you because there was times when he was coming up as a prospect when I was like, okay, this guy's gonna be a freaking beast.
Yeah.
Even when he was coming up in his earlier years with the Dodgers prior to surgery, like you gotta remember he's also coming off surgery. So like maybe
Yeah.
that's part of it was just this year was just getting his feel back. This is a guy who is very yeah, it's the sweeper has what 17 inches of break and the
Ridiculous.
sinker has 18 inches 18 and a half inches of tail going arm side, right? It's a funky low arm slot, right? It's 21-degree arm angle for May. He's a fun pitcher. It just hasn't been good, man. Like it's been
I
really
know.
bad, and it doesn't quite fit what I see from the White Sox going after. What I do think, let me make the case for Tyler Malley because that's the guy who, when I
Okay.
just went through that list of all the names I said, the one that I'm most inclined to push towards. The injury risk is there with Malley. He hasn't been healthy consistently for a number of years now, so that is a risk you're taking with this type of signing. The flip side of that is like, am I that upset if someone is signed, does their job for a few months and gets hurt? Like, obviously, you don't want guys to get hurt and you want to sign a player hoping they can help you the whole season. But, like, if Tyler Malley gets hurt, like, you should be having young guys replace a Tyler Malley at some point
Right.
in the year or next year. The other thing, he's only 31, man. Like, Tyler Malley in my head is like 34. He's 31. He's 31 years old. He's just turned 31 recently. So he's gonna be 31 all of next season, pretty much. This is a guy who it also fits the White Sox mold a little bit. He's probably too four seam heavy for what the White Sox have been trying to do. But it's four seam splitter, cutter, slider. He's got these two kind of, the cutter slider variation. They're both very similar. They blend into each other a little bit at times in terms of their shape. But I do think that the White Sox, I talked to Matt Zaleski last week and he was super we're talking about the cutter and just the uptick of just the movement fastballs, right? And this is a guy who's always lived off of two kind of variations there. The splitter is a pitch that's generally been, one of his better offerings throughout his career, and particularly this past year, even when he was healthy. He had a really good season when he was on the mound this year for the Rangers. He only made, 16 starts, but he had a 2.1 ERA this year. And I think that's, obviously there's some health risk there. Doesn't give up a ton of hard contact. The breaking balls I like, the off speed in general. It takes some talking into a lot of these guys, but I do think of the mid tier starters I mentioned there. If you could get Malley on a 2-year 18 million type of deal, 2 year 16 million type of deal, where you see what happens and you either flip him or move forward, I could see Malley being a target that I wouldn't mind there.
I think I'm kind of in the same boat, given the fact that like, yeah, he's been injured, and it's probably not going to be a 2-3 year deal. It's probably a 1 year deal. But again, if he can perform and stay healthy for 3 months,
Right.
flip him.
It's a
Like,
good flip.
cool.
Good flip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm going to throw out another name that we haven't even mentioned
Oh,
yet.
go for it.
That I think that it's a buy low guy to all hell. But how would we feel about Jordan Montgomery?
Oof, man. Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
yeah, he's hurt. Like he's hurt. I mean, he's coming off of his second TJ at 32. Or sorry, how old is he? Uh,
Montgomery is
yeah,
30.
he's gonna be 33
Yeah,
on
he's
opening day next
33.
year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't hate like a one ish to one with an option.
Yeah.
Maybe. Am I crazy for saying that? Just given like, yeah, he was horrible in 2024 over a
He was
very,
the worst pitcher in baseball in
yeah,
2024.
I think he
So
had like
it wasn't
I'm pulling up his stats right now. He
he
had
had
a
6 ERA, a 6 ERA.
6.23 over
Yeah.
117 innings. But then you go back
One
the
year. Yeah.
3 years prior,
Yeah, yeah.
it's an ERA below 4 with 150 plus innings every year. I mean, his worst year was in 21 with the Yankees, 157 innings of a 3.8 ERA,
Yeah.
and then his contract year in 2023, 188 innings of a 3.2.
It's
If
also
he can
very yeah,
if he
it's
can
that
come back healthy,
simple.
I don't hate it.
I mean, it's sinker, curveball, changeup too, which are the three pitches you're seeing kind of being integrated into a lot of White Sox arsenals right now. I
Yeah.
mean, it is. Yeah. Did you? I mean, this is kind of interesting now that I'm looking at it. Do you know in that 2024 season where he was literally the worst qualified pitcher in baseball, he had a 33% chase rate, which is kind of crazy.
That's not
To think about, and a 33% chase rate and only a 6% barrel rate. Those are both in the top 20th percentile of baseball. Um, yeah, I like it's definitely dumpster diving, for
Yeah.
sure to an
Yeah.
extent. That's nothing against Jordan Montgomery, but like it's maybe I you could convince me maybe that at a 2 year with an option for dirt cheap could be worth it.
Yeah.
I just yeah, I think that's it. It's just the interesting thing is like by the time he's back and healthy and like ramped up, then you want your young guys pitching anyway. So
Yeah.
it almost feels like you have to sign a healthy guy because you want someone who can eat
Right.
innings for the first few months rather than the last few months of the season almost, right? So I still think Martin Perez can make sense, and I still think Jose Quintana could be the upgraded version of Martin Perez, assuming that $15 million option gets declined. So, you know, I can see a lot of possibilities here. I do think, though, to wrap the starter conversation, because I want to get into relievers, and we've been yapping for almost an hour here, which it's exciting. This is the start of the offseason
Yeah.
here. We're fired up, but I do think one mid to lower tier veteran starter does make sense. As much as there's a lot of pitchers we want to see on this roster next season, and there's a lot of guys we expect to see coming up from the minors, I still think one pitcher of all these various names we mentioned that we might be interested in does make a lot of sense for this team.
Yeah, I think that a relief pitcher is like we've been saying, it's probably more of like the realistic expectation. But I think you can't go into 2026 having nobody as like a I don't want to say nobody, but like
Yeah.
the rotation hasn't had a lot of MLB experience.
Right.
So, if you can go out and sign a veteran to just anchor that rotation and go out and give you
Yeah.
6, maybe 7 innings every fifth day, sure, fine, sign me up. But again, the White Sox are not going to be pushing for a playoff spot this year. I would love it if they did somehow, but again, they're not going to be competing in September or October. So I think that if you sign a veteran guy to a 1 year with an option deal, I think that that's probably the likely outcome, just given the fact that you have so many good young arms coming up in the next 18 months,
Yeah.
that I think that you can afford to not sign a starter, but then really, I don't want to say ball out on the bullpen, but like you can get a dog in the bullpen.
Okay, that's the perfect segue right there. Heading into the bullpen conversation, let's play the same game here. Stop me when you hear the first somewhat realistic name.
Okay.
Edwin Diaz, Robert Suarez, Andres Munoz, Ryan Helsley, Devin Williams. I'll keep going because I probably went in a little bit of a wrong order there. Devin
Yeah.
Williams, Raisel Iglesias.
I'll stop you there.
Okay,
I
stop me
think
there.
that I mean he's 36, he's gonna be 36 next year. I think that he's probably gonna I don't want to say he's cheap, but I think that he's probably the cheapest serviceable reliever. I don't think that he's going to command like a Diaz or a Suarez type of money, and I don't think that he's necessarily that bad either. Like I think Spot Track hasn't projected for like around who do they
That's
have?
low.
They have
I think that's
um,
low.
it's 8 million. I think that you can do that every day of the week. And I don't think that he's gonna get 8-9 million. I think that he's probably in that 12 to 15 range right now, if I
Yeah.
had to guess. But I think that he's probably the most likely outcome, or like of the names that you've read. I think that he
Yeah.
could be the most feasible option for the White Sox.
Yeah, I think it would only be a max 2-year deal too, which is one
Yeah,
interesting aspect with Iglesias. Like, I think he can get more than 1 year. I mean, he's 36 going into the year, but I still think it still is enough. Like this season, he had a rough first half, but he ended up having a really good second half actually
yeah,
after a really tough first half at 35 years old. So I think he gets 2 years, and it could even be three. Honestly, I don't think it's three, but it's probably just two. But it's probably I still think he gets two for 25 to 30. Honestly,
yeah.
so it's probably a little priced out, but I don't think it's impossible. So I'm glad you stopped me there. Going past him though, there's a good amount of people in this next tier that I think could make some sense. Pete Fairbanks is an interesting one because I he has an option. I
I
think the Rays might decline it, but I still don't think he'd be in
no.
play.
Even with how cheap the Rays are, I don't think you can decline. I mean, it's what, like an $8 million
12,
option.
12.5, 12.5.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's a little high for
maybe,
the Rays. That's a little high for the Rays. I could see it.
maybe,
But beyond Pete Fairbanks, Kenley Jansen is the next one. Some other guys, Emilio Pagan, Tyler
maybe.
Rogers, Sir Anthony Dominguez. There's Sean Armstrong. Sure, there's a variety. Kirby Yates, David Robertson, Phil Maton,
The corpse of David
yeah,
Robertson.
Jacob Junis. There's a bunch of these guys in the next bucket though. That's kind of that first bucket, and going into the second bucket though, a lot of guys we've talked about: Luke Weaver, Kyle
Yep.
Finnegan. There's some names in there that are intriguing. Caleb Thielbar, Danny Colombe. There's definitely some names there that we actually would think are pretty interesting. Honestly, who are some of those names of just I just went through a bunch of them, but who are some of the few guys that stand out to you?
I think that like a Sean Armstrong makes a ton of sense. I think that he's like I don't want to say a late inning guy, but he can give you a good seventh or eighth inning depending on where you have him pitch. And I don't want to say again, I don't want to say he's cheap, but I feel like given the relief pitching market, some of these guys are going to have to sign for under what they want to, just given
Sure.
how much quality relief pitching is out there on the market. Some of these guys aren't going to get paid, and I think Armstrong was good enough this year to command a 1 to 2 year deal. I could maybe see him getting three from. I don't think the White Sox would go to 3 years, but I think that the most likely outcome is I think you sign one of the guys is going to be like a dude. Like I think you sign a closer this year, and I think you go out and get like another. It's probably a lefty middle inning reliever, so maybe not Armstrong, maybe like a how would we feel about like a Hobie Milner maybe?
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think Armstrong is actually a lot better than people give him credit for, honestly. I mean, last year he had some ups and downs, but like this season he threw 74 innings of 2.3 ERA ball with a .8 whip. He
Yeah,
ran a hard he had 91st percentile on hard hit rate. He struck out 26% of batters, only walked 7%. Like he had a really good season, honestly. And I think that especially getting I think Armstrong can make sense. I don't think you necessarily need to sign a closer. I think it's more of a back end guy rather than
yeah,
a closer. I think if you get someone you feel comfortable throwing in the eighth inning for you, that's a good situation where you still have Leisure, you still have Taylor, and you can make those back innings work. I think Luke Weaver is like the
yeah.
highest target. Maybe that's a tick above an
It'd be
Armstrong.
fun.
It'd be
Really
fun
fun.
for sure. I think Finnegan can make a lot of sense. He had a pretty solid showing
Yeah,
with Detroit down the stretch there. There's Tyler Rogers is another one that I've definitely been pinpointing as a name to keep an eye on because it's funky. I think Bannister will be open to a funky arm like that. There's a lot of options here, man, and that's why I'm just like, go out and sign. I don't like spending on bullpen arms, but like at the same time, there's a lot of guys here that are pretty intriguing, honestly. So there's options. There's ways to go about things here, definitely. I think Danny Colombe is an underrated one. People that watch the White Sox obviously probably have seen him being a Twins guy. I think he could make some sense. I think I think Colm can make some sense just from the standpoint of a guy who has been, or he went to Texas. I forgot he went to Texas at the deadline, but was with the Twins. A left-hander. I think the Sox need one left-hander, right? I think you're
yeah,
expecting at least one lefty to be signed, considering the four guys we have penciled into the bullpen, being Vassell, Taylor, Leisure, Wilson, are all righties, right? So
righties.
I
Yeah,
think we need at least one lefty signing. I think Colin would make a lot of sense. I think there's a few others you could slot in there. I think Gregory Soto could be an interesting buy low. Caleb
Yeah.
Thielbar is going to be almost 39, but at the same time, in a really good season for the Cubs. That could be another lefty that makes sense. So I would love to see a righty and a lefty, but I do think you want one of those tier two rather than tier three fours. I think you can get one tier two guy, and I think it's very possible, honestly.
Yeah, I think that like I don't want to say multiple bullpen arms should be the expectation that White Sox fans
Yeah.
go into the offseason with, but if they wound up signing two bullpen arms, like quality bullpen arms to multiple $1 million deals,
Yep.
it would not shock me in the slightest, just given how many I don't want to say how much turnover there's going to be in the bullpen, just given the fact that the bullpen wasn't great this year and you have a lot of guys in that bullpen that were waiver claims and they weren't really that good. So it wouldn't shock me at all if they signed two arms for that bullpen. But again, you have four righties that were pretty good this year, and
Right.
maybe Taylor ends up moving back into the rotation. Like we all hoping we're hoping that he does, but I think that the more likely outcome is that at least for this year he's sort of that I don't want to say Mike Vassell type where he can go multiple innings, but he can also go in the back end of the game. So I think that you have to sign a lefty. I think that's going to be like one of the things that I'm looking for in the White Sox offseason is sign at least one lefty. And I don't think that that's a necessarily sky high expectation for the
No.
White Sox. I think that there's enough quality lefties on the market that where you can go out and sign like you said a Caleb Thielbar or a Taylor Rogers. I'm not sure, but I think that at least one bullpen arm, at least one lefty is going to be my expectation. And maybe they ball out and go get a Luke Weaver. Maybe they ball out and go get a Devin Williams. Who knows? Like I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I think that you don't want Devin.
I wouldn't mind it. I just don't think it's possible. I don't think it's
Yeah,
happening.
I don't think it is
Yeah.
either.
I think Emilio Pagan is another fun one to mention, just
Yeah.
another name to ping there. He had like a sneaky, really, really good season as a closer for the Reds. Like he's a guy that could close games, and you don't have to put the pressure on Taylor or Leisure to close at this point, right? 2.80 RA with 32 saves on the year for the Reds, and the numbers back it up. Honestly, great strikeout rates, great whiff rates, all around the board for Pagan. I think that could be another higher end target. We'll wrap on this. If the White Sox, let's say two relievers are signed for a total of 14 AAV, give or take. Who are your two relievers?
What did we have the number at for Sean Armstrong?
Armstrong, I think I don't really agree with this projection. My opinion, Armstrong would be probably in the 6 AAV, 6 to 7 AAV range, probably.
I would say Armstrong, and then I want to get a decent enough lefty. What did you say for Colombe?
I think Colombe, I think that's a pretty reasonable pairing. I think Colombe probably gets somewhere in the I think probably 7, 8, maybe. I
Yeah,
think that probably equals about 13, 14 between the two of them.
yeah. So I think if that's the White Sox bullpen offseason, I would be more than happy with that. Especially if it's maybe they try and go a 1 year deal to flip one of them at the deadline. But if it's 2 years, 3 years, I would sign me up.
Yeah, I'll go a little funkier. I'm gonna go with a. Now I got myself second guessing. I'm gonna go with the Luke Weaver. I think
Okay.
that's a big ball budget, and that's a guy you get and you say, hey, this is our back end guy with the young guys. I think that puts him. I think he's probably more in the 10 range,
Yeah.
and then a lefty who can get some innings. I don't think, even though he had a good season, I don't think Thielbar for 4 mil is crazy considering he's 39.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
maybe a little off. Maybe it's like a Caleb Ferguson as a lefty. I'm not
Wouldn't
I'm
hate
not
that.
mad
Wouldn't
about
hate
that,
that.
or even a Ryan Yarborough. I wouldn't be upset about. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys. The point of this
Yeah.
type of people that want us to cut to the what are we talking about here? Like there's a ton of relievers on this market
Right.
that are viable quality relievers. And for a White Sox team who had such a brutal bullpen at times in the past couple seasons, like yeah, you're gonna have some young guys that fill out the bullpen. There's no reason to not add one or two legitimate bullpen pitchers in this offseason, given this market right now. And I think you're going to be able to get guys more affordably than you would in other years. And this is not me saying sign a 5-year deal or sign Joe Kelly for $40 million. That's not what
Yeah.
I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is you can affordably get at least one very legit reliever and hopefully at least two veteran relievers that can help this bullpen at least secure some games and get this team 70 wins next year, maybe.
Yeah, like you just said, I don't think that they're going to be balling out for one of the top line closers like a Diaz or a Suarez or even a Helsley. I think that Helsley's sort of he's going to be getting a decent chunk of change from a team that's not named the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah,
So I think that sort of that those like I don't want to say middle relievers because I think like seventh, eighth, and
mid to
ninth
late. Yeah.
guys are pretty interchangeable.
Yes.
So I think that like what you laid out, like a Luke Weaver and Caleb Thielbar offseason, I would love that. And I think that, you can have Weaver close games, or, maybe if you want a Grant Taylor or a Jordan Leisure closing games, you can go with them. So I think that at least one and probably two bullpen arms should be the White Sox expectation. And I know that Scott Merkin put out an article, I want to say it was earlier this week or maybe on like Friday of last week, where he said that the White Sox are going to address bullpen in that was going to be their key focus this offseason.
Yeah.
So I think that at least one, probably two bullpen arms is going to be what I'm looking for, and probably what every White Sox fan should be looking for.
Yep, I'm with you there. So we just laid it out. That's a general scope of free agency, a little bit more than general. We got into the weeds there a little bit, but we're going to be talking about it throughout. I mean, I think there's every move the White Sox make will give us more clarity on the next moves, right? I think that's
Yeah.
kind of how this offseason is going to roll. And I don't think it's going to be some crazy blockbuster offseason, but I do think we're going to see a couple moves made for sure. And it'll be more clear which spots they're going to choose to add as the moves go on, as we see some options get declined or picked up by various teams, right? Like Martin Perez's option is the first question. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibilities the White Sox pick that up, or maybe they decline it and immediately sign him to a different deal, right? Like, there's a lot of things that are going to kind of domino effect here in the offseason, and we'll be covering it all. But that's an overview of this. Do you want to do like super simplified for you right now? Like, if you had to pick like 3 or 4 guys on this list to like accumulate your offseason, what you got?
How much?
Let's go with this. Let's go 30 million AAV,
Okay.
and assuming no trading of an outfielder currently.
Ooh, that's gonna be tough because I was
Oh,
gonna
you were
flip
gonna
the
go?
question on you. I was gonna flip the
Do it.
question on you,
Go
being
for it.
like does Talkman, Benintendi, Sosa, Martin, do they any of them get traded?
This is why it's so hard. We can't even.
Yeah,
It's too hard to even do. So we'll
that's
do
that.
this.
I
We'll do
was
this in a month. Maybe we'll do this in a month, and we'll
okay.
determine. It's
Because I was
tricky.
gonna say what is the first move of the White Sox offseason? Is it a signing or is it a trade?
Ugh. I think it's a signing for a veteran pitcher. That's my guess, because you don't need any moves for that. There's no moves needed to say, hey, here's either a veteran starter or a veteran reliever that we can put in our team and make our team better. So I'll go with that. I'll say we'll flip the script. We won't do our full predictions,
Yeah.
but I will say the first move of the offseason is a quality veteran pitcher.
I'm gonna say that the first move is a Lenyn Sosa trade.
Okay,
I
that would
think
open
that
up something. Yeah,
I think the middle infield market is going to be, I don't want to say expensive, but I
yeah,
think
I
that
hear you.
I think Bo Bichette is going to command a lot of money. I think Gleyber Torres is going to command a lot of money.
Yeah,
I think that teams are going to start calling around, seeing like, hey, is Lenyn
infield in
Sosa
general
available?
would be
Yeah,
expensive. We went over
I,
the infield options, and there's not a lot.
right. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of
Yeah,
guys who are
okay,
commanding a lot of money on the infield. And I think that Lenyn Sosa gets some calls, and I think Chris Getz and the White Sox pull the trigger on one. I think
right.
that it might happen during the winter meetings. It might happen before. I'm not sure. But I think a Lenyn Sosa trade is the first one of the offseason.
All right, there we go. You have it here. All
Yeah.
right, this was a long one. We appreciate
Yeah.
everyone for tuning in. We will talk next week. I've got this is going to be coming out the beginning of the offseason. Go back and listen to Sean Anderson. I had Matt Zaleski on, who talked really good stuff about the White Sox just pitching, organizational development. We're gonna have some interviews coming up. Got some really fun stuff on tap. We've got a Billy Carlson interview going up this week for the call up over at Just Baseball. Arm and I talked to Billy Carlson, which was super cool to hear from the first round pick from this past year. So we got a lot more coming up in Future Sox, and we will talk to you soon.